Hello, good morning, and I hope you are having a wonderful day. As I was ruminating on my bed this morning, I felt a spirit inspiration for me to share this with you today. Sometimes people wonder why the Jews, up to today, are still having a sort of an upper hand whenever it comes to issues or disputes in this modern world, and why they keep on, having this disposition from rulers of nations to always come to their assistance whenever they feel they're being persecuted. And one way or the other, they're always rescued from that particular ordeal of theirs, from generations to generations. It has not been short of stories of how the Israelites or the Jews at one particular point in time were persecuted. And in the course of the persecution, they called upon God, and God came to their rescue. So today I want us to share this insight on why it is so. The only reason it is so because their progenitor believed in the call of God, and it was counted for him as righteousness. And from then on, everything about man's salvation began to work out. We will keep asking ourselves, why was it Abraham? Why must it be Abraham? No. One thing about God is the fact that he made us, and one particular stuff he imputed into us is that free will, the freedom to make our choice, to decide. And that free will is what makes us godlike. He feels like if he begins to impede on your will as a creation of his, he's already distorting the system that you ought to live freely. But even in the process of living out your free will, there are always consequences of certain actions and inactions. So where am I driving at? This free will is our freedom to choose, our choice to accept or not to accept a particular call or a particular option. So, coming to Abraham, do you really think that Abraham was the only person that God in history must have called to answer his call? Believe you me, there are other people that actually he must have actually touched their heart to walk with him, and maybe one way or the other they could not keep up with the promise he made to them, or with their trust or their belief that he is and there's no other. So definitely along the line, when they feel like it's tedious for them to continue, they drop off. But one man stood his ground and said, I must see the end of all this dragging that you are dragging me through it all, the promise that you made to me that I will be the one to forbear this Christ through my lineage. Abraham saw everything and he believed. He didn't see the end, but his utmost faith that he is going to be the one to deliver the God's promise to the world and bring about a restructuring of the world system that was fallen through his forefather Adam. That was what made the difference for the Jews. So other nations of the world, the Assyrians, the Philistines, and Amorites, and the Hittites, other nations that were available then, other kingdoms. One way or the other, the call must have been made to them, but somebody decided not to go ahead and accept God's call. But once it fell to Abraham, he decided to bear it. And whenever you say, okay, after why must it be Abraham? Is there anybody that accepts a call that a promise is given? And yes, even in your own human activities, it is that son of yours that normally does your bidding, that you feel like you are going to bequeath a lot of blessings and a lot of you tend to be biased towards him because he does your bidding. Is even unless you are definitely not a devil. So because I know one thing about it, that it's only the devil that when you are doing the best things for, he'll still be looking for ways to, um, mesmerize your life and leave it messed up because of the fact that he doesn't know what good is. He doesn't know what good is. Good and truth is from God alone. So, but then if we are created in the image and likeness of God, we tend to like act like God, biased towards the people that obey our will, that wants to do our part. So, in the way of sacrifice, let me put it this way: there's a particular story that goes. My mom is from a town in Okasalo government area of Anambra State, Nise to be precise. So there was this particular story that was told about how Nise was able to like hold their ground in the times of the ancestral warfares that keeps territories and boundary lines for towns and villages so that they will not be, invaded and taken over by neighboring or stronger towns. So in those times, um, there was this particular big town around them, Enuguku, to be precise. So the Enuguku were warriors, very strong, and they are more populous than the Nise people. And they were much encroaching into the very properties and boundaries of the Nise and taking over their possessions. So they had to consult. One thing about them is that they consult with the gods, which is also a form of saying they consult with demons because those gods were not of God. So the gods said they want a sacrifice, someone that will do their bidding. They want a human sacrifice, and the person will now be their eyes and their ears in the land of the spirits in order to deliver the Nise people from the Enuguku invaders. So I'm coming with this story. There's a reason I'm saying it in terms of preference and headship and biasness towards giving the obedient one the mantle and the protection. So of the four villages in the Nise, nobody agreed till one certain man. I don't know his name now, but is it Nwawo? I don't know, or I can't tell. He agreed, and he's from the village that should be the second son, the second village, not even of the highest hierarchy, either the third son of the Nise person, which is the third village. He agreed to go for that particular voyage into the land of the spirits to be used as a sacrificial victim in order to, awaken the spirits to fight their battles. So he's going down. He said that one thing he will request is the fact that automatically his own village will be made the head. Until date, when after the sacrifice, let me know that this story will be for another day. But the point I'm trying to make is obedience that merits headship and preference. So after the sacrifice that he did, the Nise people won the war against the Nuguku people, and his village, I think Ara village, now became the head of the whole Nise, because Nise they have Umuazu village, they have Ara village, they have Isiakbo, and they have Ungodo. I think the head then was Ungodo, but because of the fact that Ungodo couldn't provide someone that will answer the call, Ara provided it, and thus Ara was made the head of the Nise clan. So today, the seat of power or the seat of headship rests with the Ara people because of the sacrifice of their son. So that is how it is for Abraham. Because Abraham decided to obey God to the last, he became the head of all human clan. So the Jews, because of the obedience of their forebearer Abraham, still have that preferential treatment or that preferential grace lying upon them, even if the gospel has been spread over the world and a Jew today decide to come to Christ. Definitely, even their old covenant is still godly, but it means that they have to obey the law to the last, and the law does not actually give salvation. What gives salvation is Christ. So, but in the terms of that is why Christ now said that for those that were born of women in the old covenant of Abraham that God has with them, those who were born of women, none is greater than the Jew. So if you're thinking about the flesh and you are fighting a Jew, he will definitely win you. It's something that you can no longer argue. So most of these are people that come up and say that the Jews are messing up the world system, the banking system, they are hijacking it. Yes, they have the right based on their forebearer Abraham and the blessing that Abraham gave to Isaac, you know, and Isaac gave it to Jacob, which he stole, but he still the mantle was still on Jacob, and Jacob gave it to his children, the 12 sons of his. So you can see where the argument is leading and why the Jews are always having it ahead of every other person whenever you are coming to them according to the flesh. So bomb them, you know, genocide and all the stuff, plagues and all that stuff. The Jews have always survived it. You know, even when Pharaoh, the ruler of the whole empire of the world, wanted to subdue them, God had to send someone to deliver them. Even the time of Esther, look at the words of Mordecai, that generations have passed and we have faced a lot of consequences. Who knows that whether you are being put in that particular position to like save the Israelites? Because even if you don't do it, definitely God will send people because he knew himself that the Israelites cannot be wiped out by one, no civilization, no king, no conqueror has ever been able to wipe the Israelites out because there's a promise of Abraham on them. So it's a promise of obedience, and that is one of the biggest. In fact, that's a factor. Adam disobeyed, and Abraham obeyed. You know, and it was counted to him as righteousness. So then, the fulfillment of every other obedience, that's what we now call about the Christ-like obedience to the last. When Christ obeyed to the last, and instead of him to like sacrifice goats and blood, a body he was prepared, and eventually the ultimate sacrifice for man's salvation was paid and distributed to all people. So if you are now born under the spirit of Christ, as you are born again, then you can now contend with a Jew on a ground that you can defeat a Jew because you're no longer acting on the flesh but by the spirit. So if the spirit says that this Jew he's failed because he has not believed in the ultimate sacrifice of God in Christ, definitely you that believe you are ahead of him. So that is just how salvation works. So it's a matter of obedience and believing in the person that gives obedience. So when Christ told the Jews that before Abraham I was, and now died, which Abraham couldn't complete, though Abraham was almost, but he was not a person. He was not righteous. He didn't obey to the last because he actually, had a lot of sons and daughters. Ishmael was a child of not of the promise, but of the flesh. Abraham was fleshy. He was doubting, but Christ never doubted anything. He believed everything to the last, and then he was. That was why he said that at the end of it, or when he died on the cross and resurrected, every knee bows at the mention of his name, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. So that is the summary of salvation. So being born again means that you've inherited the new purpose in God, the new life of authority, of redemption to that predates Adam, because this is God, the owner of the world that have made the sacrifice. And when you enter into that economy of the sacrifice of Christ, the world is below you, man. So that's my message for today. I hope you found it very educative and spiritually enlightening, which is the more important because at the entrance of the Word of God, there's light. Have a great day and be blessed.